Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. Friday, finally. Does it even mean anything anymore? It is Friday, August the 7th, 2020. And, the hurricane update means something, so let's get right into it. Don't have a lot to talk about right now, and that's a good thing because we know that's going to change. So I wanted to talk about this real quick. The anemometer and weather station system that I had deployed for Hurricane Isaias there on the bridge going over to Ocean Isle Beach in North Carolina in Brunswick County. It was doing great. We have used this equipment. That's an R.M. Young anemometer, and we have been using this equipment all the way back to 1999. Not that same one, but the brand. And that's a great anemometer. It's wind tunnel tested to like over 200 miles per hour, and it feeds data into the yellow box that you see there, and the whole thing is attached and clamped through that orange device that you see there that is normally used for holding highway signs on those Jersey walls there, that concrete barrier that you see, and the orange, what's called Barrier Buster, that's the brand name of it. The brand name of it, those were all purchased for us through our crowdfunding partners, and Scott, looking at you, buddy, and from Raleigh, North Carolina. But anyway, we've got several of these. This is one of them. And it was reporting and doing fine, and then the eye wall was coming in, and we lost our wind data. And it was it was all zeros, and then occasionally we would get a burst, and then sometimes it was ridiculous. There was one wind speed that showed like a gust over 400 miles per hour, and it's like, no, something's very, very wrong here. The pressure sensor kept on working just fine, and it's interesting. So this is the if I outline it where you can see it, this is called the impeller. It's not a propeller, it's an impeller because it doesn't make anything go forward. It's not propulsion. It's having wind receiving on it, and it measures energy. Anyway, this is the anemometer right here, and then the pressure sensor is inside this little box right here, and that's all. I'm sorry. It's hard. A lot going on. That's the pressure sensor inside that box that has a little port so that the air going by it doesn't create false readings. It's all very cool. It's all high-end equipment, very expensive equipment. The anemometer itself is $1,500. The pressure sensor is $700 or so. This little box right here is where the little chip is, and the wiring goes in, and all of that feeds into the case. Okay, does that make sense? So we lost the data from the anemometer. I was like, okay, and but we were still getting pressure, and the pressure reading was fine. So that was very odd, and I was worried. Did something hit it? Did somebody come by and steal everything? Whatever. It was very disconcerting right at the moment that we needed it most. And so last night I finally went by to the Ocean Isle Beach Bridge and picked this stuff up. With my partner Mike Farrow. I drove, and he helped like the getaway car, unclamped it, put it in the back of the truck, and took off. And then we went down to Ocean Isle Beach itself and picked up the camera that was down there. So what happened? Why did it stop working? Well, I solved the mystery. And it's important when things go wrong that A, we don't lose our head over it. You move on to the next play, as we call it. You figure out what happened and you move on. Don't beat yourself up about it. Yes, it would have been great to have had continuous wind data, but there's absolutely nothing I could do. Something happened. I need to figure out what it was. So I know what's happened. This right here is bolted. That's called a floor flange, and that is bolted into the steel barrier buster device here. And this is held down very well with these 1/4-inch bolts. No problem there. This is a 1-inch threaded pipe, and that screws into the floor flange, right? You screw it in there, and it holds. This has worked in all kinds of hurricanes, all right? No problems. Matthew, Michael, okay? Dorian last year. We've put these out in severe weather events, nor'easters, whatever. It works. There's nothing wrong with the design, but there is wrong, we're humans, we make mistakes. What I think happened, and I'm sure of it now, is this part right here where the pipe and the floor flange meet. The thread on the pipe was rusted, because it's been used a few times. And when I went to set it up on the bridge the night that I put it out there and screwed the mast in, I didn't put it in all the way. It felt like it, but because of the rust and everything, it stopped. And I just assumed, right? After turning it and turning it and turning it, oh, it stopped and I couldn't turn it anymore. Okay, it must be all the way in. You screw it all the way in until the threads are no longer visible, and it fits right into that floor flange, and you're good to go. It would take a train hitting it to knock it over. So I'm sure that what happened is that didn't go in all the way. How do I know that? Because when I went back to get it, it turns out that this entire pipe with the anemometer and the pressure sensor was hanging on this side of the bridge, just hanging there. No damage at all. I couldn't believe it. The anemometer's not busted, it's not scratched, the prop shaft on there is not bent. And the reason it stayed so intact, A, that is a very strong cable right there. It's a 5-conductor cable. It's pretty darn strong. And B, what it did is it probably worked its way out and kind of just gradually tilted over and then just slumped over the side. It didn't go, whoo, you know what I mean? There was not a lot of velocity involved. And the wind at the height of the hurricane was coming from this direction, this being over on this side, that's the leeward side over there. It was protected from the strongest wind, so it didn't get the hell beat out of it. You understand? And then when the backside came around, it was up against, any wind would have been just pushing it against the bridge, kind of holding it in place, the concrete barrier, and lo and behold, the thing works fine. Unbelievable luck. So what do I do about it? I figured it out by looking at the bottom of that pipe right there, and sure enough, just about half of the thread, where it's already rusted, just because metal rusts, had a little bit of discoloration in it where I had screwed it down in, and you could see it just didn't make it all the way. There's no other explanation. That's it. Human error, but not from laziness or stupidity. It's just, okay, now we have to be more thorough. So what we're going to do is get a brand new floor flange, a brand new pipe, and then we're going to look into something that we can put on there when we fasten it or we screw it in to lock it into place. Something like Loctite or something. And then every time we're done, we will simply unscrew these bolts here and replace the whole apparatus that holds the thing in place. Does that make sense? Figured it out, put our minds to it, move on, next play. We got great wind data up to that point. And it's funny because as it leaned over, there was a couple of moments where it did record some good wind readings, and I do believe that we had a gust. There's a gust on there to 87 miles per hour, I think it was, or 88 or whatever it was, and I believe that. And I'm going to go to the National Weather Service here in Wilmington. We're going to look it over. I know a few people there, and we'll make sense of it. And we've got great pressure, that's for darn sure. The pressure box worked just fine, and the lowest pressure that was recorded was 986.9. All right, so that's how we start the update today. Now, on with the discussion. I just felt like you guys would be interested in that. It's part of our operations, and sometimes things don't work perfect. You figure out why, you solve the problem, you move on, be ready for the next time. Okay, in the Eastern Pacific, we do have a system that's probably going to go on to develop. Good news is it should stay away from the Mexican coast. So no issues there except for maybe some swells. If this gets going out over here as a hurricane, those swells could emanate out and eventually reach parts of Mexico, including the Baja Peninsula. Other than that, if we look at the Atlantic Basin, one area out here in the tropical Atlantic, no surprise there. Everything's primed and ready to go. We're just now waiting. It's a waiting game. Nobody's anticipating it with any kind of excitement in terms of what's, it's not good what's coming. It's going to be very interesting and exciting by definition, but it's going to have some really bad consequences. You're going to see, unfortunately, but at least for now, as I said yesterday and even the day before with those dire updates that I did, it's quiet now, and let's look at that as a blessing. That's a good thing. All right, so looking at the satellite imagery, in the Eastern Pacific, that's our system right there. I think it's 91E, if I'm not mistaken. Could be mistaken. That's all right. That's an area of invest area, whatever you want to call it. Bubbling up of showers and thunderstorms, the intertropical convergent zone to the west of there, bubbling up some. Also in the Atlantic. I mean, we are getting closer and closer to the lights being turned on. That's the way I look at it. It's all set up. Now somebody just needs to turn on the switch. Moving over to the east, more vigorous tropical waves. You can clearly see everything lined up. And it's just a matter of time as we lean closer and closer towards the climatological ramping up after August 15th. The background state should be clear, ready to go. Dry air will subside, and conditions will be very favorable across much of the tropical Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Gulf of Mexico. We've been over all that before. You know that. You should know it by now. If you're like, oh, I didn't know the hurricane season was going to be busy, that's a surprise. And hey, maybe it is. Maybe you're just now tuning into all this, so here you go. It is coming, but at least for now, it's not. So that's a good thing. The vorticity signature, getting more active overall, very identifiable, but nothing really consolidating off of that stream of energy all through here. Like a grapevine, if you will. There's the area in the eastern Pacific, and we'll see as this develops how it consolidates and moves off in this direction. Just really neat to see, in my opinion. We can look through the clouds. You know, that's the cloud image. This is also a satellite image, but it's looking at vorticity, picking up on the spin in the atmosphere, relative vorticity as it's called. And when it bundles together, that conservation of angular momentum, it looks like a circle. And anytime the weather looks like a circle, it's usually pretty fierce in the way the laws of physics go. All right, real quick look at the GFS out here in the eastern Pacific, and you can see our system. There it is right there. Tries to come together. This is 72 hours, 96 hours, goes on out, away from Mexico, as I mentioned, so not a problem there. And then other systems try to come along and develop as well. This goes on out to almost 9 days. That one dies out, another one, and another one, and another one, as this very favorable pattern starts to set up, which will eventually migrate its way over through the hour zone here and into the Atlantic Basin. It's just a matter of getting there. And then, like I said, the lights will turn on. So, it's not all bad news. I'm going to talk about this for a minute, try to give you some positivity. This is the graphic from the Hurricane Center's website. You know, it's 2020. I brought my water today because I talk and my throat gets itchy. All right, it's 2020, and, you know, all that implies, I get it, and we throw a lot of negative news at you, but the good thing is we can prepare, and I really encourage you to do so, and, you know, it's not just what people say, you know, it's not part of, I don't feel the obligatory, oh, you got to prepare. I mean it, right there from the heart, and you can prepare. There's things you can do, and everybody's different. You know, so I'm just going to go over a real quick checklist for you. First thing you do, you figure out your vulnerability to the hazards. What are the hazards? Storm surge, wind, rain. Those are the main. Downburst and tornadoes, that's kind of a secondary hazard. Downburst winds, where the thunderstorm winds kind of come crashing down. You get those big downbursts, you know, strong gusts of wind that last several seconds. Those are downbursts. And we see some tornadoes in tropical cyclones, usually in the bands. But wind, storm surge, and heavy rain are the three main hazards, and there are things you can do. You got to figure out, do you live near where you might have to evacuate? Do all of that stuff now. Ask your neighbors, ask your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, whatever. You know, I live over on 9th Avenue, a couple of blocks from the ocean. What's the plan? Do we have to leave or not? When do we leave? Who tells us? Where do I find this out? Start asking these questions now. You got to maybe a couple of weeks before it really starts to ramp up. That's still time. You know, really, hope is not lost. All right. If you're on medication, like me, you know, my high blood pressure, I found that out the very, very hard way in 2018, the end of 18. So I got to make sure my blood pressure medication's in stock. 90 days worth is what I carry. You know, if it starts looking low, I fix it. All right, you need to do the same, whatever it is that you're on medication for. Your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, your sister, your grandma, your grandpa, your pets, Everybody that's on medication, you got to make sure you have an ample supply, because I think what's going to be coming is going to disrupt things again, like we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm not just saying that to scare you. I'm saying that to give you a heads up. This is Mark giving you an advantage. And if I'm wrong, and we're all wrong, and no hurricanes hit the U.S. from here on out, great. I would love to be wrong, because what's coming could be very disruptive. So fill the medication now, tomorrow, whatever. Don't wait. Well, let me wait and see if there's anything in the pipeline. These guys always say this. They're just trying to scare us. No, I'm not. And, in fact, the better I do at my job, the more successful I will be. Scaring people with BS, that doesn't work for me. So please take this seriously. If you got a generator, you never used it, you bought one, you hadn't had to use it yet, go on YouTube for your particular model. How do I operate a Honda EU 2000, whatever. Learn how to use it. If you bought it at Lowe's or Home Depot, maybe go in, if it's not too busy, ask them, hey, I bought a generator here from you. Exactly how do I use that? And if they're very helpful, maybe tip them $10 or something, seriously. If you have used it in the past, maybe for Isaias, I'm talking to you, Delaware Steve. He knows who he is. I don't know if he has a generator, but people were without power. Over 3 million people went without power from Isaias. And I bet some of them used the generator. So make sure it's in good running order. You got some time. Run it over to the small engine repair shop in your town. And, there's Facebook groups. Ask on Facebook, who services generators in my area? You'll start to get a consensus on who to trust and who not to trust. Use social media to your advantage, okay? Get that generator looked at, understand it. That's going to be your best friend. And then, of course, when you do use it, keep it outside, well ventilated, so it cannot kill people with carbon monoxide or overheating and catching something on fire. Other little things, making sure that make big dividends later. Make sure you have all your insurance papers where you can access them if you're a renter. Maybe look at getting some rental insurance. I don't know if there's enough time or not. I don't completely understand the insurance industry, these waiting periods, whatever. But look into it and just make sure everything's in order. Your business insurance, all that kind of stuff. If you've got a boat, try to think about where you're going to put it. Look at all the people in Southport Marina. Category 1 hurricane was coming. They probably all said, no problem. And I'm not besmirching them. Okay, I get it. It didn't look that threatening. And is everybody every time going to take full measures to prepare? No, they aren't. But look what happened. If you've seen those pictures, if you haven't, Google it. Southport Marina, Isaias. And look at those pictures of all those boats shoved up into there. So figure it out now. Where am I going to put my boat? Where am I going to put my Carolina skiff? Seriously, do it now. Figure out your plan. Your pets, where are they going to go? How far do you have to evacuate if you do have to evacuate? Make those plans right now and stock up on a few extra things while you can before the hordes of people go to the store. Extra water, extra batteries, those things that will get you through about a week. Start storing them now, whatever your paycheck will allow. If it's only $20 worth of stuff a week that you can get extra, okay. Some people can put thousands of dollars into hurricane preparedness. Some people can't do hardly anything at all, money-wise. But you know what? Thinking doesn't cost a dime. Think about what you're going to do. Whether you're on a restricted budget with almost no disposable income or one of the wealthiest people out there that's watching this update, the one commonality, our brain power costs nothing to operate. All right? So please keep that in mind. Trying to help you out. 25 years of doing this. I've seen it. I know these things can help you out if you do them early. Luck favors the prepared. All right. In a few hours, I'm going to make this available on YouTube. And no commercials, no ads, no Google ads, none of that. No monetization. Because it is supported, this project, the Hurricane Highway. It is a series, a documentary series that looks back at the 2019 hurricane season but it does so in a different perspective. You're just going to have to see to understand. It uses flashbacks, previous hurricanes or tropical storms that are maybe relevant to where we are in the current episode. You'll see. It'll all make sense. Episode 1 debuts this evening. I'll probably release it, so to speak, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, kind of like going to the movies. And it is fully supported by our patrons, literally funded by patrons on Patreon. And to all of you that have supported this project for the last 3 years that our Patreon has really grown, I'm very proud of this. I did the music for it. I like talking about that because the music's pretty good. You'll see. I worked real hard to gather the interviews that we have in it and did all of this, of course, also during the pandemic. Some of these episodes, I had to have people send me their interviews over WhatsApp. I mean, it's stupid pandemic. And it's turned out pretty good. I've got 5 episodes in the can. I'm going to put 1 out per week until the whole thing is done for the next 8 weeks. And that'll give me time to finish episodes 6, 7, and 8. The very last episode, just to let you know, is all about Typhoon Tisoy, because one of our partners, Brent, took the HurricaneTrack brand to the Philippines for that typhoon in December, the end of November, early December, and we end with Tisoy. And then at the very end, right before the credits of they were wrapping up season 1 finale, a shocker, a nice cliffhanger for you. You'll love it. Or not. You'll have to see. And everything in between. Dorian is in there. Imelda. Our Herbie. The Herbie balloon testing stuff that we did last year. The history of that. A really, really neat series. If you're into the weather and you're fascinated with hurricanes and our story, I'll take you on that journey. 500,000 miles at least down the metaphorical and absolutely literal hurricane highway. That'll be available tonight, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, sponsored by, supported by, funded by. It's like there's public TV. This program funded by Patreon. You know, that's exactly right. So thank you all very much. All right, so I hope I leave you with some sense of positivity in the light of all that's going on. There's something we can do about it. We're not helpless. And that's the bottom line here. You know, we'll face it together. We'll get through it. But by gosh, do something about it. Don't sit around and just be helpless and hopeless. All right? If you can do that for me, I'd be happy. Have a good weekend, the rest of your Friday and the weekend ahead. And tell me what you think once this Hurricane Highway Episode 1 hits tonight. It's called The First Miles. That's the title of Episode 1, 7 p.m. Eastern. I can't wait to hear what you think. Thanks as always for tuning in. I do appreciate it more than you'll ever know. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again over the weekend.